something magical is on my computer screen. Do you know what that something magical is?
On your screen?
Yeah, my computer screen right now.
Oh, yes.
You want to tell people what it is?
It is your mock draft simulator.
It is not my mock draft simulator. It is the Pro Football Focus is the one that I use. Mock draft simulator. That is because it on this Wednesday is the first of 3 consecutive Wednesdays that young Anthony Haney and I, the fine producer of this radio program, are going to do a mock draft. That's right. It is mock draft 1.0 here on the Hoffman Show, and we are still going to do that mock draft. Unfortunately, just the way we like to do it, where the screen with the mock draft is on the board for the viewer, you on YouTube, to see if you're streaming us on YouTube or if you're watching this later on demand. Sadly, that's not an option because the technology is not allowing it to be an option. So, alas, and they get to stare at our faces while we stare at the big board, and we are officially underway for Mock Draft 1.0. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Chicago Bears are on the clock. The way we're going to do this, Anthony and I are going to work together as a single front office that somehow magically picks for all 32 teams. That also means we have to agree on any trades, etc. We are going to do this over the full next hour. So if you're listening now but are almost to your destination, then definitely check out the podcast later. All right, Ant, here's what we got. I got Caleb Williams on the board at 1-1. He is the overwhelming favorite. He is what is going to happen for sure in real life. Is that who? Do we want to pull a wacky bit? Slash, would you make even an argument for football reasons to do anything other than just take Caleb Williams at number 1 overall?
They're taking Caleb Williams.
Well, we know they're taking Caleb Williams. Would we take Caleb Williams?
Oh, I don't really think it's worth it, to be honest.
To take Caleb?
I mean, for us, it would be, but I'm just saying, are you talking about just for this exercise?
The correct thing to do is take Caleb Williams. I think we're on the same page, and I'm not confusing the hell out of you and thus the audience. I don't think there's any logical argument, considering what the Bears have done. If you wanted to 3 months ago be like, I'm a Justin Fields guy, get him Marvin Harrison Jr. and see what happens. Like, okay. I would say that's still probably very silly because at the end of the day, like, you have Caleb Williams as number 1 on the board for most teams, and you should absolutely pretend like you're going to take him, and then maybe last second be like, I don't know, Washington, that draft pick you're offering sounds real good, or those 3 firsts, or, that's what it would cost, is 3 firsts as a starting point of the negotiations, and clearly that's not going to happen. And thus, I think both to make the rest of the draft make sense and because it's the right move, you take the guy with the highest upside. You take the guy at the position that you've been searching for your entire 100-year franchise history. You take the guy who has been the number 1 guy for years targeted towards this draft. You take the 2022 Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, at number 1. Anthony, I'm going to do it. I've hit draft.
Right.
Let the fun begin.
Let's get it.
Number 2, the Washington Commanders are on the clock. The Washington Commanders.
We are the Commanders.
Are on the clock. All right, I'm GM Hoffman going around the room. Haney, last chance to make your pitch. What do you think? What do you think we should do here?
I think we, as an organization, should go with Jaden Daniels.
Okay, why do you like that option over one of the other quarterbacks?
I like Jaden over Drake May, JJ McCarthy, specifically because I feel as though where we are at quarterback in today's NFL, we're more so moving to the mobile quarterback, and I think he offers that not only as a dynamic runner, but I feel like he's also shown that he can consistently make the throws that we necessarily want to see. Now, his frame, his I guess inability to sort of kind of take care of himself, that does worry us a little bit. But I think we can coach him up, and I think with time, I think he'll understand that he has to protect himself for the greater good of the team and for his career in general. So I think Jaden Daniels is our guy.
So I think I actually, God, I think at this point I'm probably just going to agree with you. Both because I think it's what's most likely to happen, and I'm kind of interested to see what happens the rest of the draft. But also because, again, I'm very tight between these three guys. And one thing that I believe in with Jaden Daniels, that if the rest of my organization felt really good about him, is I believe in who he is as a person. I believe in who Jaden Daniels is as a competitor. I believe in who Jaden Daniels has been as a worker, as someone who has shown the ability to improve, the progression over the 5 years in college from Arizona State on through, obviously, what was a breakout season last year at LSU. I am scared that we're not taking Drake May because there's a chance that dude could be really good, and I think we have some pieces in the building that could help him get to that level. I think that when you look at the size of May, the arm strength, the second reaction ability, which is something that May is great at. Jaden's second reaction is to run. May's is to make a play, if you will, which it's a wider variety of outcomes. I think that passing up on that and knowing, like, man, if he's good, we're going to be the team that passed on him is really scary. I also really like McCarthy, as I've discussed a lot. We're not going to go too deep into it now. There's a part of me that just feels safer with him where I'm like, I think if we just get him a little bit, we can bring him along. He knows how to play a secondary role to start, but I think that'll give him time to develop the other parts of his game. And I actually think the upsides there is a lot higher than people realize. And I think he's also like really, really elite on the mental side of it. But I think we're going to go Daniels. So I know that's probably shocking to people who expected me to go in a different direction. But I as of today, I think that's the direction I would go. There is one other thing, though, as we're about to turn the card in, and the Vikings called. The Vikings are offering 11, 23, a 2025 first rounder, and their third rounder next year as well, which is their highest pick. We can't squeeze them for a 2. That's their package for our second pick. Do we want to stay pick and take Daniels, or do we want to entertain that trade with the Vikings?
I believe in this guy, Jaden Daniels.
All right.
I'm going with Jaden.
Hey, Kevin, eat a bag of... We're taking Jaden. So, back to draft a player. Jaden Daniels, which PFF is going to hate because he's stupidly far down on their board for some reason, to the point that I need to actually filter by position to find him. There we go. Jaden Daniels, we are taking him at 2.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We're now on the clock with the New England Patriots at number 3. And we got some teams that are ready to knock down the door. The Vikings are ready to offer that same package that they just offered Washington for 3.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to do a little bit of a funky bit because PFF doesn't like that trade nearly as much as the real world would. It says it has a 10% chance to be accepted. That's incorrect. But I might force that trade anyway, so I can do that. The Vikings offer an 11-23 round 1 and round 3 next year. Or actually, we can do 129 this year. We'll figure it out. The Raiders are willing to offer 13, 44, and next year's second for 3. We can add in like a 4th next year too. We got the Broncos on the horn. They're willing to offer their first this year and next year. So those are teams 11, 12, and 13. Are there any of those picks that we're interested in for the Patriots? I'll tell you what, Ant. You get to think about that in the break. You get to think about what the New England Patriots could do here. Or do they just take Drake May or J.J. McCarthy? That is when our mock draft 1.0 continues next on the Hoffman Show. We continue mock draft 1.0. We've sorted through the trade offers, and we got one that we like. We're going to trade the number 3 overall pick. We took Caleb Williams 1 with Chicago. Jaden Daniels the pick for us at Washington at number 2 as we do mock draft 1.0. We're going to trade with the Minnesota Vikings. We just can't pass up those 2 first-round picks this year for number 3 overall. And we're also going to, well, it doesn't really matter. That's the main point. We're just going to do this. and I'm going to hit offer trade. This trade has been accepted. And now we got the Minnesota Vikings on the clock at 3. And it comes down to Drake May, or do they pull a surprise here and take J.J. McCarthy?
I think they pull a surprise. To me, I think J.J. McCarthy is a better fit with Kevin O'Connell. Just looking at, what Kirk Cousins was able to do in that pro-style offense, I think J.J. McCarthy sort of kind of was in a similar situation. They rely, a lot on the run to set up the play action. And I think J.J. McCarthy, I think he fits that, that model to an extent.
I think he definitely can. The one concern I would have here I think that would ultimately push me towards Drake May. There's two big ones, but one is McCarthy's deep ball. He's got a really strong arm, can really zip the ball over the middle of the field, but his deep ball and thus the big play ability might be a little bit limited. And for Kirk's, some of his flaws, that dude can cork it deep and puts a really great arc underneath it, understands that you got to let receivers run underneath balls, and Drake May's pretty darn good at that. Jaden is the best deep ball thrower in the class, but Drake can loft it out there. JJ, not as much. That at least at Michigan. Maybe that gets better over time in some of these touch throws, the layering that you do need to have. And I think if I'm Kevin O'Connell and Quessy, the GM, comes to me and says, Drake May's got the highest ceiling in this class, can you coach him out of the bad habits? I go, that's why you hired me, bro. And I would lean towards Drake May because of that. With that said, I'm like Mr. freaking JJ McCarthy, and based off of the fact that I love him in a lot of these offenses, the West Coast offenses that we see dominating the league. So if you're like, no, I really like McCarthy as the fit, I'm down to go McCarthy here. And then we got a wild mock draft going.
I mean, the thing is, I do think Drake May offers more upside. And the Vikings, I don't think they're in a win-now kind of situation. So maybe they can,
I see, but I don't know that they're not. They still have Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
And you're now on the rookie what you are is you're on the rookie quarterback timeline. Where it's how much can we spend, how good can we be until we got to pay our quarterback. And then we got to rebuild how we make the roster. But I don't think that they're not taking a step back this year. They are being aggressive to get their guy.
I think they'll contend. That's what I think they'll contend.
So if that's the case, do you think McCarthy's a little more ready? In which case, maybe it is McCarthy.
Yeah, I will go McCarthy.
All right. J.J. McCarthy. Ant did it, not me, everybody. J.J. McCarthy, which means Drake May is still on the board at 4.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Cardinals could pull a real wacky, and they could be like, yeah, Kyler, this is your final year here. We'll do a dead money thing later, but and I think it's not that bad to move on from him even after this year, because instead of restructuring him, they haven't spent any money. But I do think this is far more likely a trade situation, because you now have Drake May on the board, two teams that are potentially going to be knocking down your door from Denver and Las Vegas, but I think especially Denver, and the Cardinals have a ton of needs. So I would say if I am, also do the Saints try to trade up? Probably not. The Raiders, it's kind of funny because PFF is like, hey, the Patriots want to trade back up. I'm like, I'm sure they do. But I would say Denver's the team that's probably willing to give you the farm here. So I'm gonna take Denver's. Let's say it's the next 2 firsts. So it's 12 this year, 2025 fifth, and if you want to include, a third this year, a third next year, let's say a third next year, something like that for number 4. So Arizona is basically going 4 to 12. Remember, they already have 27 for Houston.
Yeah, they do, but I don't think you can pass up on Marvin Harrison Jr.
I'm actually with you. I'm glad you didn't take the bait.
Yeah.
So
I don't think
I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. Arizona needs stars. They don't have a lot of stars. They're kind of they've got a little bit of Washington to them where they've got a bunch of dudes that are fine and they need stars. So I say let's take Marvin Harrison Jr.
I think it's a done deal.
Okay. The Chargers want the hell out of that pick. Chargers are getting out of there. Broncos, they do the in-division trade. 2 firsts for 5. Chargers go back to 12.
Chargers are in a situation where they can afford to do that. So
I think the Chargers need multiple players. And I don't think the kind of player that could they take Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors? Absolutely. But I think the kind of player that they want would be more I think there's some guys at 12 that have become interesting for them that we'll obviously get to.
Yeah, I think they can afford it.
All right, I'm going 12, trade accepted. All right, the Broncos are on the clock. Broncos take Drake May. Done and done.
Yep.
The Giants are now on the clock. You've got Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, Rome Odunze amongst the top players available. Of course, the Giants, they could have used a quarterback. I mean, they could, if May falls to 5, if you're the Giants, do you call the Chargers and be like, want to do a little flipsy daisies? And then the Chargers maybe trade back twice from 5 to 6 and then 6 down to something else. I think that's possible. But we didn't do that. I think they just take the best receiver on the board here, which means you get to pick your flavor of Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors.
I'm going Neighbors.
I tend to agree with that. I think his size-speed combination is just nasty. Although Odunze, I was listening to a scout today on Mina Kimes' show talk about how Odunze has a great ability to just be where he's supposed to be when the ball's in the air. He finds a way to adjust, and that's really tempting. But I think the speed really works well with what they want to do offensively in New York. All right, Tennessee Titans are super interesting because everyone is everyone's mocking Joe Alt to them. I'm not convinced that Joe Alt is a Bill Callahan type of guy. Bill now, of course, the line coach with his son getting the head coaching job. Do we just do what everyone else does, or do we become some independent thinkers here? And a team like Jacksonville, who needs a receiver, do they potentially trade up? Or does someone like a Buffalo come way up in the draft to take Rome Odunze here?
To be honest, I'm thinking like everybody else. Just because I think they want to get back to the identity where they can, smash mouth football. I think that's the Titan identity. And I think going line here, they missed out on Peter Skoronski last year. So I don't know. I think line is their best bet. But I think they're a trade back candidate.
So,
but not to 17 and not to 28.
Jacksonville at 17. I mean, this is an intra-division trade, which rarely happens. And we could just force a trade for someone else. Because I do think that teams, does New Orleans want to get a big time? I mean, I guess they have Olave. There's some teams that if they really want a certain defensive guy, like a defensive lineman, perhaps, that they come up in this draft. Do the Jets be like, hey, we could take a Odunze? Because they signed Mike Williams to a 1-year deal. The Jets are like the most fascinating team in this draft, in my opinion. I think that do the Colts be like, we'll take a Odunze? Obviously intra-division as well. But if you're Tennessee, would you rather have 17 and 48 or 7? You want to go Joe Alt.
I do.
I can't wait till next week when I just get to make my own picks. All right, we'll go Joe Alt at 7. Everyone, again, is mocking Dallas Turner, the edge out of Alabama, to Atlanta at 8. Do we just go that direction?
Yes, sir. They need some pass rush juice.
They do.
I looked at their D-line. They don't really have much. They have Grady Jarrett returning and a whole bunch of backups.
Sneaky. Laiatu Latu's got tremendous pass rush ability, and if you want instant production, he's your guy. He's also got a medical thing, and I'm not sure exactly what that is, so we'll just go Dallas Turner. Let's see if we can get through the top. Well, at least let's get Chicago here. Chicago, they've got Caleb Williams. Now, Rome Odunze's still on the board.
Yep.
That is someone that they absolutely could take. But with Rome Odunze on the board, now if you are, I don't know, Jacksonville, we said at 17. If you're Cincinnati at 18, if you are the Colts at 15, do you want to come up and take your guy, Rome Odunze? And if you're Chicago with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore already there, do you maybe slot back and go offensive tackle or D-line a little bit later? I think I would tend in that direction.
If I'm the Bears, I'm standing pat. I'm drafting Rome Odunze.
Well, I'm going to put you in a bind here then.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a trade to think about during the break.
Bet.
If you are the Indianapolis Colts,
Nope.
you can trade 15 and 82 for 9. And you get Rome Odunze.
Nope.
You sure?
I think I know which direction they sort of kind of want to go.
Oh.
I like receiver is a need of theirs, but I think corner is a bigger need of theirs.
All right, Anthony's gonna have to talk me out of this one in the break. We'll make the pick next on the Hoffman Show. Time to get a move on an Ant for Mock Draft 1.0. We are at number 9. The Chicago Bears are on the clock. They only have 4 picks in this draft. So if they're going to make a trade out, it's going to have to be with a team that's willing to give up multiple picks. You are against doing the or you are very against the Indianapolis Colts trading up.
Yes.
Those are your
am.
boys.
Yep.
Seahawks are kind of loaded at receiver. The Raiders, like, they've got Devontae Adams already. The Bengals, I mean, they could get T. Higgins insurance and trade up for Rome Odunze. Do you like that idea?
Ooh. To trade T. Higgins for Rome?
So, no, you would just trade. I mean, that's interesting. Do you trade?
I mean, there's only 2 players that have been franchise tagged that haven't been extended. And T. Higgins is one.
Would you trade 18 and T. Higgins for 9? Now we're getting crazy.
I think I would. I think because it doesn't look like they plan on extending T. Higgins. So you still get a guy, in Rome. Granted, you lose out on a first-round draft pick, though.
That's the thing. You're giving up a lot there.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I'm against that now.
Okay, you're against that now. So we take T back, but you could trade T somewhere, which is kind of the point. You could recoup. So let's do this for. Well, no, because I don't want to do that. Let's just say this: you're going to trade 18, and what do you think that T gets you back? A second, a third,
a second at least.
Okay, so let's do 18 and 49 for 9.
Let's get it done.
Offer trade.
Sign me up.
Trade accepted. All right, the Bengals are now at 9. They take Rome Odunze. At 10, you got Brock Bowers as the tight end who's somehow sitting there, and then you got offensive line for the Jets. Which direction do you want to go?
I think I want to go with Brock.
I agree with you. I actually think this is way easier than people are making it. Your offensive line does not have to be as good for Aaron Rodgers as it does for Zach Wilson and others. And has Tyron Smith missed a ton of time? Yes. Has Morgan Moses missed some time in recent years or last year? Yes. But that's an outlier for Moses, for one. Typically, he plays through everything. 2, Elijah Vera Tucker gives you some responsibility or some flexibility. And 3, Brock Bowers is a special talent that you could use now and you could use later. And with Aaron Rodgers stomping up a storm, pounding on the table for a guy like Brock Bowers, I'm going to give that guy Brock Bowers. Okay, so now we got the New England Patriots on the board at number 11 after we traded with the Minnesota Vikings for them. They could go quarterback here and take either Bo Nix or Michael Penix because you got the Raiders still coming that it could take one of those guys. Although, after that, unless someone trades up, you could still probably get whoever, like let's say the Raiders take Penix, you could still probably get Nix at 23 if you wanted. So just probably worth mentioning that there. But they could use everything. So who's your best available player? What do you want to do for New England?
To be honest, I think Gerard Mayo, he's probably going to want to look at the defensive line, to be honest. Do you think drafting Jared Verse?
I think this is too rich for Verse. I also think there's well, if you wanted to go like I don't know what they're going to play schematically, whether they go 3-4-4-3. But he's like he could play the edge on either. He's like a big body. I think I'd probably go inside though for them. What do you think about interior line and Byron Murphy, who a lot of people, including I can tell you, Mina Kimes, who joined us earlier today for a recording of Take Command, some of which you will hear later on this very radio show. She thinks Byron Murphy is the best defensive player in the entire draft.
Whoa. There it is then.
So you go interior D-line Byron Murphy.
I will go there because I like Braden Fisk as well out of FSU.
Okay, let's go Murphy.
Byron Murphy.
Okay. Chargers now on the clock. They need a lot of stuff. They've got their choice of corner here, all of them still on the board. They could go, it's probably a little rich to go wide receiver here. I mean, Bowers would be an interesting one if they're on the board and he's still on the board. You could go defensive tackle, Johnny Newton out of Illinois. Lot of different options here, but they could also, here's the one, I got to double check their depth chart. Harbaugh is traditionally like taken a lineman early. That's like, this is my nasty guy who I love and is going to be the tone setter for my team. So there's a couple of guys that could potentially go here in that realm. Talisi Fuaga, Troy Fontenot. Like they've got some options here. Any of them stick out to you?
You said Broncos, right?
No, Chargers.
Oh yeah, because they traded. I would say
like Rashawn Slater is a beast at left tackle.
Yeah, you need one on the right side. Would you go JC?
You could go JC Latham. I might go Fuaga.
Okay.
Although Fontenot from Washington's also very tempting. But I feel like Fuaga's got that nasty streak that Harbaugh likes. Yeah. Let's go to Talisi Fuaga there. And again, we have made that trade. Broncos going up to 5 to take somehow Drake May because that's the way it fell.
It's going to happen, man.
13 to the Raiders. They obviously need quarterback. Do they go Penix or Nix here? Or do they pass and try to, at the top of the second round, get Penix in the second?
I think they also may look to trade back. I think you can get Bo Nix or Michael Penix a little later.
So that begs the question, who's the player that's currently on the board that someone is trading up for?
I think the Jags trade up. I think the Jags go get Quinyon Mitchell before the Colts do.
Okay. I don't dislike that. Let's see. We're going to go 17 and
13.
17, but I'm saying on the Jags side, 17, and this is where I don't trust PFF's mock draft simulator always. I'm going to say 116, their extra fourth. Is that enough? No. Third?
Yeah, I think a third might get it done.
Third, Vegas maybe gives back an extra fourth. So something like that. Offer trade accepted. Okay, so now we got the Jags on the clock at 13, and they're going Quinyon Mitchell. I like that. I like that a lot. New Orleans, super interesting. Do they go quarterback? If all of a sudden Nix and Penix are sitting there on the board, do they go quarterback, or do they roll with Carr and just be like, we hope that it goes better than last year? We will continue to look. Obviously, they could protect him. This could be a spot where some of the offensive linemen start to go. We will get to the New Orleans Saints in our mock draft 1.0 next. We're in the middle of our mock draft 1.0. It's going to carry us for a lot of the first half of the show today, especially because we've got the Masters updates coming at you, the top and bottom of the hour, which, it's great to keep you updated, but does eat into our time. So thus, I think we're going to be able to take this a little bit longer, Ant, than we initially anticipated. A good one if you can't stay tuned to listen the entire time to podcasts after the show. We'll put it all together, and instead of just like the hours, we'll put mock draft smushed together. To recap, though, for those of you listening live, of course, right now on the radio, you got Caleb Williams 1 to Chicago, Jaden Daniels 2 to Washington, trade at 3, J.J. McCarthy to Minnesota, Marvin Harrison Jr. 4th to Arizona, Drake May 5th to Denver in a trade, intra-division with the Chargers and Broncos, Malik Neighbors to the Giants at 6, Joe Alt 7 to Tennessee, 8 Dallas Turner to Atlanta, Romadunze 9 to the Bengals in a trade with the Bears, Brock Bowers 10 to the Jets. New England then picking after that trade with Minnesota at 11 takes Byron Murphy II. Then Talisi Fuaga goes to the Chargers at 12, the tackle out of Oregon State. Kenyon Mitchell in a trade. Vegas trades with the Jags. Jacksonville takes Kenyon Mitchell 13. All right, on the clock at 14, we're going to go Troy Fontenot, the very versatile offensive lineman who's going to be a tackle in name but could really play almost anywhere on the line. He's going to be our pick for the New Orleans Saints. They've lost both of their tackles, I believe, this offseason. Then the Colts on the clock at 15, and I think they've got some interesting options. I think one is adding some vertical big speed that Anthony Richardson can just absolutely chuck the ball downfield to, and that would mean Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. But you have another idea, I think, and this is the other position they get targeted a lot, which is corner.
Yeah, I think they go corner here just because last year they got Josh Downs in the second round. I think they really going to lean on him and also Michael Pittman. So I don't think spending a first-round draft pick on a receiver is in their best interest. But I think corner definitely is, and I think they will take Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. He's a big, rangy corner. He's standing at 6'2", and I think they want to look, at a bigger corner just because of what they did last year with Juju Brents, who was on and off the field. But I think they want a corner with some size, with some length, and I think Nate Wiggins fits that build the most.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. In terms of style, I think there's some other corners that a lot of people like more, but Wiggins fits that style. And as we saw with the Commanders and Emmanuel Forbes, you take your guy. You take the one that you think is best. And then you hope it works out better than it did for the Commanders and Emmanuel Forbes, at least as a rookie. Seahawks at 16. I think they are a very interesting team. Like, I think that they could potentially trade out of this pick, try to get back a little bit further into the 20s. But what I think is interesting, Ant, is we've somehow done a draft where I don't feel like anybody is crazy falling here. So in order to trade back, you need someone that someone wants to trade up for. And maybe one of these teams in the back half of the first round is like, yo, some of these tackles that we really like if you're Buffalo and you really like a tackle, or you think Brian Thomas Jr. is your guy to replace Gabe Davis, like, could Buffalo potentially trade up to somewhere like this and allow Seattle to maybe pick Graham Barton or Jackson Powers Johnson, the center, two centers in this draft that are first round caliber players? I think that's possible because they do need interior O-line. But at the same time, I think for positional value, you probably wind up taking edge here because they need some of that too.
Yep.
And then it becomes down, do you like Jared Verse or Laiatu Latu? I lean towards Latu, but I could be convinced either way.
Yeah, I think Jared Verse or Latu definitely need some pass rush. They got Boye Mafe. He had a incredible year last year. You put somebody opposite him because they lose out on Leonard Williams. His contract is up. So I think they just need a little bit more, and I think an edge would be here. So I think Jared Verse.
All right, you're going to go Verse. Latu's, if his medical, it checks out for people, he's going to go way higher than people think. All right.
Let's go with him.
Jacksonville on the clock. Or sorry, not Jacksonville. Jacksonville traded out of this pick. Vegas on the clock. And by the way, the quarterbacks are still there. We still got Nix. We still got Penix. So that is a huge, huge win for Las Vegas if it plays out like this.
Mm-hmm.
Which guy do you like for them? Because I think that's obviously the direction you go. I mean, I guess you could just keep rolling with what they got and maybe try to, in the second round, take one if they fall, because there's not like a ton of guys that are, or a ton of teams that are looking. You get even riskier and be like, we're going to take an O-lineman here.
Yeah, I think Antonio Pierce, he really likes O'Connell.
Yeah.
Um,
He really likes is Jaden Daniels, but that's a different discussion.
Might be an unpopular opinion. I think they go O-line here, though.
Okay.
I think it gets risky. They're going to wait to get Bo Nix or Michael Penix.
Okay, so if that's the case, then you got your choice. Are you an Olu Fashanu guy, a JT Latham guy, or an Amarius Mims guy? Because they've got all of them on the board to choose from. There's some other, Tyler Guytons, et cetera, that other folks like. But I think at this stage, you're looking at those three players, and it's really a matter of personal preference and stylistic preference. I don't know that Fashanu's got the toughness that's like the Raider way.
Yeah.
I think you're looking at Latham or Mims.
I think J.C. Latham is their guy. I think he's the guy.
All right. I'm gonna go J.C. Latham then. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other at this time for the Raiders. All right, Bears are back on the clock now. Obviously, earlier we had them take Caleb Williams at 1. They need edge help as well. They're a really interesting team for Laiatu Latu because he's kind of like a moves more. I don't want to say finesse, but he's a different kind of player than Montez Sweat. And that's a really interesting spot for him to go. Again, this trade with Cincinnati. They could also go interior D-line here, and Johnny Newton right there down the road from Illinois goes from Champaign to Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm good with either of those. I think those would be the two guys that I would put up on the board.
It's tough.
The other wild card option is, do you go Brian Thomas Jr. at wide receiver? Which I think is tempting, but like I'm not that tempted by that with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen already on the roster. And as deep as this receiver class is, I feel like I can get someone else later.
I'm going Laiatu Latu.
Okay. I'm fine with either of those. Let's go for it. Rams on the clock. They're psyched about that because this is an easy one. As tempting as it might be from a sexiness standpoint to be like, Penix or Nix, because they need to get the quarterback of the future for when Matthew Stafford is done.
Yep.
Aaron Donald just retired. Johnny Newton's on the board. The pick is Johnny Newton from Illinois.
Yes, sir.
Any qualms?
Nope.
No? Excellent. All right, and then let's get the Steelers pick here, and then we will take a break, and we will finish this off at the top of – sorry, I'm not supposed to say that anymore. If you've been listening to the show, you know that. Coming up at 5 o'clock. Not the top of the hour. It is the top of the hour, but nobody knows that. Top of the hour is 5 o'clock. Did you know that? The point is, the Steelers are psyched here because they need center, and you have your pick of Jackson Powers Johnson or Graham Barton, and I would say Graham Barton is the easy selection there.
Yeah, I would also go with Graham. Do you think wide receiver could also be a possibility?
I think it could be. It could be. And Brian Thomas Jr. as a big go-get-it receiver with Russell Wilson throwing deep balls to him is very interesting, but I feel like the more Steelers pick is a guy like Barton, who, by the way, might be able to play tackle, but probably is a day one, like not even pretty, really good starting center.
Yeah.
Super versatile, and great athlete along the offensive line. Okay, Dolphins are on the clock at 21. You got the Eagles, you got the Patriots, you got the Cowboys all coming up. And, by the way, you got a couple of tackles falling that might make it kind of intriguing for Washington to trade back in. We will look at all of that as we wrap up Mock Draft 1.0 next on the Team 980. Right now, though, continuing with Mock Draft 1.0, last 5 picks were Graham Barton of Duke, the center to the Steelers, Johnny Newton to the Rams, defensive tackle. In a trade, Chicago was at 18. We took Laiatu Latu. J.C. Latham goes to the Raiders in a trade. That was at 17. And then Jared Verse, the edge out of Florida State, went to Seattle at 16. At 21, Miami, they need O-line. They got Fashanu and Mims to choose from. Man, that is a pretty good situation for them to be in. I could go either way. They're both move pretty well. Mims is like an ultimate freakazoid kind of guy. But I think Fashanu was a guy that earlier in the process people were really high on, and for some reason he's fallen off. Sometimes I think those guys wind up going where the scouts originally had them. I'm going to actually lean towards Fashanu here.
You're going Fashanu? I was more so thinking Mims just because of how creative Mike McDaniels is with the offense. I don't know. I think. Do you think Mims is a little bit more mobile?
I mean, he's definitely more mobile for his size because, I mean, that dude is an unbelievable athlete. But I also think, like, Fashanu's you feel good about as a day one starter. He played for 3 years, played a bunch of snaps. Like, Mims played 7 games. Yeah. They need dudes now. I'm going to go Fashanu. I'm making a call here. Yep. Fashanu is the pick at 21. All right, the Eagles are at 22. PFF has their needs listed as wide receiver, linebacker, DB. I don't know that they need wide receivers. They have Devontae Smith and they have A.J. Brown, who, by the way, reminds some people are reminded by Brian Thomas Jr., or that Brian Thomas Jr. is like A.J. Brown. He's still somehow on the board for us, but I think the DB thing is way more intriguing for them. And I think they could go a couple of different ways here. One, they could go traditional corner. Terry and Arnold, some people's number one corner, is still on the board. His teammate Kool-Aid McKinstry, still on the board, but you'd probably just take Arnold. The other way they could go is Cooper DeJean, who's probably more of a nickel safety type of player, but they've been trying to figure out the safety thing, and they brought back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to do that. What if they just let DeJean kind of roam around and do stuff? I think that's a really intriguing pick for them. But I could also just say, like, hey, let's do the safe quote-unquote thing, and go with Terry and Arnold. Good zone corner. Fits what they do.
I mean, I think I might lean more towards your theory on the safety thing with Cooper DeJean. I do like Terrion Arnold, but they just took Kelee Ringo last year. I think you want to...
Ringo wasn't a high pick, though.
He was a 4th rounder, but I'm just saying, like, he played towards the end of the season.
But they were terrible at corner. I would go Arnold.
Yeah.
I would just go... I think DeJean is, like, intriguing and sexy, and sometimes you get distracted. You take the guy at the position that you need that does the thing that you want them to do. I think you go Terry and Arnold. I hit the button. We're going Terry and Arnold.
All
right. New England at 23. Now... this becomes interesting because they need... what did we give them earlier? We traded back. We gave them Byron Murphy II.
3. Yep.
So they could go Penix here or Nix. They're both still on the board. So they could go quarterback. They could go tackle and take Amarius Mims. They could take Tyler Guyton at tackle. They need playmakers. They could go Brian Thomas Jr. And that's probably... or they could go take a shot on an edge and do like a Chop Robinson or Darius Robinson bit.
I think they continue to build on their trenches, to be honest. I think they go O-line here.
The other possibility, I would say, is what if the old Washington Commanders called?
We packaged together a couple of picks.
Yeah. Where did they go? Washington Commanders. So if they go 23 for 40, which is Chicago's second, and they've already got 34. It's so funny because so many of the picks are like right next to each other. For Washington, you give up 40.
78?
No, that's too rich. 152. So it's a 6th. And if you want to make it a 5th. 40 and 139 for 23. If you're New England, do you want that extra 5th? Or do you just want to take a guy?
I think they're in need of overhauling their roster. I think they take the pick. They might ask for the 4th. Is what
Maybe. Okay, so what if let's
Maybe
even
they
make
add
it the
400.
compensatory. Yeah, 40 and 100 for 23. That feels more fair. All right, Washington, you're back. Then the question becomes, who do they take? I would probably go Amarius Mims, and hope that we can get the most out of one of the freakiest athletes that we've seen. I think you could also go Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, probably a little bit safer, but the upside's not quite as high. But Guyton is kind of a crazy athlete as well.
Yeah.
Which direction do you want to go?
I think I would lean Guyton just because I wouldn't necessarily want my rookie quarterback out there getting this. I mean, I'm not saying Amarius.
That's the incorrect answer. The correct answer is Amarius Mims. That dude he played he only had 7 games.
Yeah.
But there are 7 good games in the SEC.
Yeah.
Amarius Mims. So Washington comes out with Jaden Daniels and Amarius Mims. Cowboys are on the clock. They're probably bummed. They're like, dang, we thought we had him. They could go. They're an interesting spot for Brian Thomas Jr. I know they need other things. Like, I think the safer play for them is to go Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. But I could definitely make an argument or Kool-Aid McKinstry or like one of these other players that on the defensive backfield as they lost a couple of guys. But I actually think like, hey, their win now, Brian Thomas Jr., big play receiver, kind of can replace Michael Gallup.
I like tackle for Dallas. I like Guyton. You let Tyron leave.
You did. Here's my question for Guyton is, can he play left tackle? Because they need a left tackle. They've got a right tackle, don't they? Or is their right tackle meh? Is it Terrence Steele? Is he still playing right tackle for them?
Yeah, I think he is.
All right, let's just go Guyton. Sorry, Cowboys. You're going. I mean, good pick. Packers, they could use a tackle as well. They're probably kind of bummed that Guyton goes there. They could also go interior defensive line. They could also go safety. They're an interesting Cooper DeJean spot. One of the youngest rosters in the league.
Yeah. I like Cooper.
Okay.
I like Cooper here.
I don't dislike that either. All right. Tampa at 26 is next up. We'll finish out the first round next. Mock Draft 1.0 wrapping up on the Hoffman Show. Finishing out the first, we got the Tampa Bay Bucks on the clock at 26. Got the Cardinals, Bills, Lions, Ravens, 49ers, and Chiefs still to go. I think you could see a pair of defensive ends go here. And I think you could see Chop Robinson and Darius Robinson go back to back. So the dream that those guys get to Washington at 40. We did, by the way, trade back into the first round and take Amarius Mims at 23 for Washington. So you get the tackle, but I think the edge is going to wind up being something different, which, by the way, is something we should talk about. We're going to do some analysis of our own draft later, and I already maybe have some regret on that front. But I would say at 26, Chop Robinson, just like that dude. The athleticism of that dude in the Tampa Bay Bucks jersey just feels dangerous. Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense. They also moved on from Shaquille Barrett, so I think him plugging him in, I think will be best suited for them for the first round anyway.
All right, so then you got, I would say Arizona's probably kind of bummed because they, Jonathan Gannon, what he did with like Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, some of those speed type of guys in Philly, I think he would love to have Chop Robinson available, but I don't think he's mad at Darius Robinson either. He's one of the best players at the Senior Bowl, kid out of Missouri. So I think he's definitely an option for them there. They could also go line. They could go Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon as well on the interior of the offensive line. He's definitely one of the better players available at this point. I also think that they are, maybe if someone wants to trade up, this is the kind of area where like Brian Thomas Jr. is becoming a steal. I can't believe we haven't taken him yet. But I would say either Jackson Powers Johnson or Darius Robinson is who I would offer up here.
I think Darius Robinson is the way to go here.
All right, so the edge out of Missouri. Then, Brian, this is easy. Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU.
Yep.
He goes to the Bills. The Bills are like, they're pretending it's the middle of winter. They're running around with their shirts off, drunk, jumping through tables. Because they get him, Thomas Jr., to replace Gabe Davis, which is a better Gabe Davis. They are psyched. The Lions are interesting because they are the kind of team that feels like they can always take another offensive lineman and kind of do. So when you talk about best available here, you're talking about Jackson Powers Johnson. You're talking about obviously the quarterbacks, which they're probably not that interested in. Although, I don't know, do they take a flyer on a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix? I think if those guys were younger, you'd think about it. But because they're older, you're not going to wait for them to sit behind Goff for 3 years. So if you want some kind of project quarterback, maybe, but that feels like a reach. There's not like a good fit for that. I do think they could go.
What about safety?
There's not really a safety. I mean, I guess Newbin out of Minnesota, but there's not really a safety that's like a first-round safety this year.
Yeah.
I think some of the guys that are considered first-round players still are like Jordan Morgan, but he could be a guard. You could take him and maybe justify that. I also just wonder if, like, do they just go receiver too? And do they look at, like, Ladd McConkey out of Georgia and be like, we put him in the slot. Give Goff another dude who just is open all the time. Replace Reynolds. Like, that could work for them.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tempted to do that.
I mean, so where are you going to line up Amon-Ra?
He can play outside.
Okay.
And has played quite a bit outside.
I think that makes sense then. Like, especially if
or do you want to give them like a speed, a speed receiver? Then you go, the kid out of the kid out of Texas who set the combine record. But
so you're gonna have two speedsters and Jamison Williams in him.
But that's the thing is you don't
like
need
Ladd,
that.
Then.
I think Ladd's the guy.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go Ladd McConkey because like that's the thing. The Lions have built their roster to a point that they can do that kind of thing. They can have a luxury pick. All right, Ravens. They could use a receiver because they can always use a receiver. They also need big-time O-line help. I think I would probably go towards the O-line. So we're looking at Jordan Morgan or Kingsley Suamataia, tackles out of Arizona and BYU.
You don't like cornerback?
I like the tackles on the board better than I think I like the cornerbacks. I don't know. I could be talking to Kool-Aid McKinstry.
I like Kool-Aid to the Ravens. They lose Ron Darby. Last year, the secondary they struggled a little bit as people got hurt anyway. So I think cornerback, is a place that they need to address because Mollett, Darby, you need some studs out there, and I think
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'll take Kool-Aid McKinstry. Okay, the 49ers could use O-line and corner. They're probably bummed that McKinstry just went off the board. They could go TJ Tampa. They could go Kamari Lassiter. They could go Mike Sanderstill if they want a nickel. This is, again, it's the 49ers. They're loaded. Do you just go, does one of these receivers have something for you that you think can ultimately replace Deebo Samuel? A lot of people think they could wind up trading Deebo in this offseason. Is there a guy like that? Do you reach on another edge? I don't know what you do.
What's his name? Xavier Leggett?
Leggett out of South Carolina?
He runs like Deebo. He's built like Deebo. If you're thinking of moving off of him, I think he's the replacement kind of guy.
It feels a little rich for him, but not by as much as you'd think.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to consider here is there a team like Las Vegas or New England that wants to trade up and it'd be minuscule to trade back up here and get the fifth-year option on a quarterback? So let's play that game. Let's say Las Vegas, who's sitting at 44, wants to give you 44 and 112 for 31. Like, or something like that. I don't have the draft charts in front of me. Now, the Raiders don't have a ton of picks, but do they want a fifth-year option on a quarterback? And this is where I think these quarterbacks being older is a wacky bit. Is like, how much does that fifth-year option mean to you when that quarterback's going to be 29 at that fifth-year option? Yeah. Let's just stay put. Who do you want? Who do we take for the Niners? I'd say let's go Jordan Morgan, tackle out, because I think he might wind up playing guard too. So whether he is a right tackle for them, whether he winds up playing guard for them, whether he's Trent's eventual replacement at left tackle, I think there's some potential. Like, he's a very moldable piece, I think, potentially. I'm going to go Jordan Morgan. And then, which receiver do you want for the Chiefs?
Xavier Worthy.
Okay. He's very, very fast. Xavier Worthy, you run a 4.2, you get to go in the first round. And that is our mock draft. Quickest of recaps. Williams to the Bears, Daniels to the Commanders, McCarthy to the Vikings, Harrison to the Cardinals, May to the Broncos, Neighbors to the Giants, Alt to the Titans, Turner to the Falcons, Adunze to the Bengals in a trade, Brock Bowers to the Jets, Byron Murphy to the Patriots after their trade down at 11, Fuaga to the Chargers, Kenyon Mitchell to the Jags at 13 with the trade, Troy Fontenot to the Saints, Nate Wiggins to the Colts, Jared Verse to the Seahawks. Then back half of the first round, Latham to the Raiders, Latu to the Bears, Johnny Newton to the Rams, Barton to the Steelers, Fashanu to the Dolphins, Terry and Arnold to the Eagles. Washington trades back up into the first round for Amarius Mims. Tyler Guyton then goes to the Cowboys. Cooper DeJean to the Packers. Chop Robinson to the Bucks. Darius Robinson to the Cardinals. Brian Thomas Jr. to the Bills. Lab McConkey to the Detroit Lions. McKinstry to the Ravens. Jordan Morgan to the Niners. Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs. What I think is fun about mock drafts, though, the most fun, is you learn stuff from them. A little bit later in the show, Anthony and I will reflect on this mock draft and tell you what we learned from going through the exercise.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.